Now, let me start this off with a warning that in this video, there will be spoilers for the latest episode of The Mandalorian, which is episode 7 of season 2, or chapter 15. So if you have not seen it yet, and you don't want anything ruined, it's a really good time to click away. Okay, so let me first say that though I don't think this was the best episode of the season, I still thought it was good and certainly had its interesting aspects, with the way the returning character of Mayfield was handled, as well as Djarin removing the helmet, being two of the most notable parts. But there was also some rather intriguing moral or ethical questions sort of raised here, and I dare say this may have been the most thought-provoking episode of the show thus far. And I don't mean what I'm about to say to be an insult or complaint. It's actually sort of refreshing in this day and age where everyone and everything seems to want to convey a message. But The Mandalorian has more or less been just surface-level entertainment so far, meaning that after watching an episode, you're not usually left to ponder the moral ramifications of the character's actions, or any deeper meaning or message that was embedded into the episode. But with Mayfield's little story arc in this episode, where we learn about his sort of stance on things, where he asks what's the difference between the good guys and the bad guys when they sort of do the same things, and I found it ironic, and intentionally so I think, to see him start out the episode in a forced labor prison camp run by the New Republic, which is something that the Empire also did with its prisoners, and sometimes to people who weren't exactly prisoners. Anyway, though, in his one episode last season, Mayfield came off as a shallow, I do bad because I am bad sort of character. In this episode, we go into his past and learn he's haunted by the things he's lived through, that he saw an entire city destroyed and his whole division wiped out at Burnin Khan during Operation Cinder. And if you don't know what Operation Cinder was, basically it's a final order that was given by the Emperor after his death, which more or less said, if I can't have the galaxy, no one can, and saw several worlds attacked and basically destroyed by the remaining Imperial forces. But in this episode, Mayfield, played by the comedian Bill Burr, who maybe feels a tad out of place in Star Wars, though by the end of this episode, I sort of liked or enjoyed his character and he felt less like someone sticking out like a sore thumb, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of him in the future. Anyway, in this episode we learn that Mayfield sort of believes that it doesn't matter if you choose a side or not, or which one you choose, because people will always end up dying because of other people's beliefs, and we can certainly see that throughout human history, and that the best you can sort of do is live in a way that allows you to sleep at night. Which is sort of like what they tried to do with DJ in The Last Jedi, and DJ stands for Don't Join if you didn't know. All those theories about it maybe meaning Dark Jedi were just a little bit off. But DJ was this guy who sort of played the middle for his own personal gain. He was opportunistic, and his message came off as a rather heavy-handed one about how capitalism is bad because it sells to both the good guys and the bad guys. Whereas with Mayfield, the interesting thing with him over a character like DJ is there's actual complexity there, and we're given a reason for the way he is. Yes, Mayfield's done bad things, but it mainly seems to be because he can't find faith in anything, and you can tell that deep down he seems to want to do right. He does blow up the base at the end, but it's not always easy to know what right is, because even what he did there, destroying the base, seems like a good act, and by and large it is, but it still causes more death and destruction. Which all touches on the endless cycle of war that we see in Star Wars, and also sort of plays into one of the other themes of Star Wars, which is where sometimes people think they're doing good but actually aren't. For example, the Imperial officer they encounter, Valen Hess, he's someone who probably very much believes in what he does and says, that people don't want freedom, they want order, which may have also been a subtle nod about how the Empire will become the First Order someday. Regardless, though a part of him probably realizes the Empire isn't the best, another part still probably believes it's a necessary evil, and that they're very much in the right by trying to bring order to the galaxy, even at the expense of freedom. And this is a question that is always asked in our society, especially lately it seems, where there is a debate over how many personal freedoms or liberties people are being asked to give up for the sake of the safety of others around them. And though I don't think this episode was intentionally meant to be a commentary on all of that, it was written and filmed before the current state of the world after all, it's always interesting to see questions like that addressed in a way that gets you to think instead of telling you how to think. Though maybe I'm the only one who looked this deeply into the episode, who knows. Either way, here at the end, Cara Dune, who clearly had her doubts about Mayfield, lets him go not only because he helped them, but because she feels like she was wrong about the type of person that he is, she feels like he's redeemed himself, which opens up a whole other box of questions about whether or not doing a right can make up for doing a wrong, which is another big Star Wars theme or idea that we can ask about Anakin's redemption at the end of Return of the Jedi. But what it also did was show that she was willing to let her own views or beliefs supersede the laws of the New Republic that she's now sworn to uphold, as she's recently been deputized as a marshal. Which also then tied into what Djarin did in this episode by removing his helmet and everything Mayfield said to him while they were in the transport together, when Mayfield asked him if it's that he can't take off the Mando helmet or if he can't show his face, and that rules start to change when you get desperate, or that everyone's got their line they won't cross until things get messy. And so in this episode for Djarin, things get messy, and when they do, he changes the rules he lives by and has always lived by, first by wearing a stormtrooper helmet instead of his Mando helmet, and then taking it even a step further when he full-on reveals his face later on in order to bypass the security system. And we'll just never mind the fact that the only thing that seems to be required to bypass the security system is to not be wanted or known by the Empire. It doesn't have to recognize you as someone who's actually authorized or anything. It just has to not recognize you, I guess. Though I will say I loved Boba Fett's line where he said, "Let's just say they might recognize my face," when he was asked if he would go in, considering he of course has the face of a clone trooper. Anyway, here, as if we needed confirmation, we learn just how important Grogu is to the Mandalorian. He's more important to him than his beliefs and his way of life even. And him taking off the helmet was, I think, one of the best moments of the show so far, and was very much earned. Yes, he did take it off for IG-11 last season, and that was also part of his growth. But here it was like the last straw breaking. Here he was forced to make a choice on the fly between the Way and Grogu, and he picked Grogu. All of which he does for the sake of hopefully being able to find Moff Gideon, and I thought it was great that when Djarin sent him, Gideon, a message at the end of the episode, he said the exact same thing to him that Gideon had said to him at the end of Season 1 about how important the child is to him. But obviously there were two very different meanings from both of them. I thought that was extremely cool and very clever, and if I haven't given it away by now, I do think this probably is the best written episode of the show so far. Going along with Mando removing his helmet in this episode, I think we can officially say those rumors that came out before the season started about how Pedro Pascal was upset because he wanted more scenes with the helmet off, and that he had walked off the set and that the latter half of the season wouldn't include him as much, well, I think we can say those were very much wrong. And though maybe Pascal did ask for more scenes with the helmet off going forward, and this episode, along with what he learned from Bo-Katan a few episodes back, that not all Mandalorians wear the helmet all the time, has set that up. And though, yes, we have gotten other big characters in this series now, and they've received a lot of attention in the episodes, the Mandalorian and his story continue to be front and center and the driving force. And also when it comes to Mando removing his helmet, I think my favorite moment in the episode may have actually been when Mayfield was clearly about to go off script, if you will, and give the Imperial officer a piece of his mind, and Mando gives him that subtle shake of the head asking him, "Please don't do this." It's oddly fitting that even with the helmet off, Pedro Pascal is still doing a terrific job with his little visual performances. And speaking of visuals, it was so cool to get to go inside of Slave One, and though Boba Fett wasn't in this episode too much, it was awesome to see his armor looking all fixed up again. I love the look of him all around, and despite no announcement of a Boba Fett series yesterday, I do hope somewhere, sometime soon, we get to see Tamora Morrison playing this character again. Oh, and I also loved the seismic charges, and they sounded exactly like they did in Episode 2. As for little gripes with the episode, once again the Imperials were pretty useless in a fight, and since Djarin wasn't in his Beskar armor, they were again unable to hit him when they were shooting at him, where they usually can hit him, but they only seem to hit him in the parts that are covered by armor. Cara Dune was once again also punching out Imperials through the armor, but at least at one point we saw Djarin trying to block an attack from one of the pirates with his armor, probably momentarily forgetting he wasn't in his Beskar, and it clearly hurt him, meaning that this armor doesn't do too much to protect anyone. It was also another shorter episode, being only roughly 33 minutes long when the opening, intro, and end credits are removed, and I really hope next week's season finale has been banking all this time the other episodes haven't been using and is extra long. I feel like, or hope, that there's a lot that this season finale next week has to cover, and I'm really looking forward to a nice long episode to cap off this season. And speaking of that last episode, I'm less confident now in my theory that Grogu will be taken away and trained by a Jedi at the end of this season. In fact, I'm feeling like we won't see a Jedi at all in next week's episode. I think it may even be a while yet before that happens. It could even be that the two, Grogu and Djarin, will be together all next season before a Jedi finally catches up with them to possibly take the child away. But who knows how this is all going to play out. So to wrap this up, I actually thought this was a really good, well-written episode, one of the better ones overall, but not the best. I think they did a great job with Mayfield in this episode, taking him from a character that felt a little out of place and that honestly I didn't care too much about, and turning him into one I wouldn't mind seeing again. I really like that Din Djarin's story is coming full circle, that he is evolving as a character, and I thought it was the right time for the helmet to come off again. Boba Fett maybe wasn't in there too much, but what we got of him was great, and I think he'll have a bigger part to play in what I hope to be a long season finale. And all around, I thought this episode was a solid lead-in to that finale. Again, it showed just how much Grogu means to the Mandalorian, and what he's willing to do to get him back. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought about this episode, or what you thought about what I thought about this episode. Either way, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.